this is how the home page would look like. So when someone will install the extension, this is what they will get. So first thing they have to, if they have their account, all they have to do is to put their email ID and password, and they will get into their MetaMask wallet. But if they don't have the account, so all they have to do is to click on this create, and from here they can create their accounts. And when they will create their account, they will not only create their account in the MetaMask, but they will also get their own private keys. So what I will do, I'll come back to the login. First, let me get into my account based on login. So what I will do here is I'm going to simply type my credentials. So I'll say Daulat Hussain, so it's there, and I will type my password, and I will simply click on this login. So once I will click on the login here, you can see here you will find the home page, and here you will find all the details, all the tokens you have imported. Like if you want to send Ether to any wallet, you can simply transfer. You can pass the amount and pass the wallet address, and you can transfer the fund. I'll show you. And here we have the account. So if you want to use other account instead of the account you have in your MetaMask, this one, you can simply do that. So from here you can import the account using the private key, and all the account will reflect here. You can simply click on that, and that will be selected, and you can easily able to start doing the trading. And from here you can import the token. So you can do in two ways. You can take the address of the token and you can import the token in the MetaMask. But here what we are doing for simplicity, we are taking the address, name, and the token symbol. These are the three information we are taking. Okay, so that's what we have here. And if you click here, you can easily able to log out from the application. So let me first, what I would show you, so what I will do, I'll simply log out from the application. So here you can click on that and you can log out from the application. So let me create an account and let me show you. So when you will install the extension, this is exact interface you will get. And from here you have to click on this create account, and from here you have to do is simply click on this create account, and here you have to provide all of this informations. So we going to keep this information into our backend part. Just a moment. So what I will do, I'll show you the backend part as well. So first thing, I'm going to give the name. So I'll say, let's say Shoaib Bhai, and I have to give the email ID. So what I will say, let's call it Bhai because I already have registered Shoaib Bhai. So I'll say bhai@gmail.com, and I have to pass my password. They'll say not PASS pass. Then I will come here, PASS pass. Let's provide S, and then click on this sign up. And here we are making the transaction. You can see we have logged into the applications, and what this transaction done, it will create a new wallet address for us. So you can see this is the new wallet address we have created. You can click on that and you can simply copy, and this is the address we have generated. So this is the wallet address we have generated, and the private key is already set in the backend. Okay, so I removed that. So you can see the private, you can see we are fetching the balance, and we have nothing in here, nothing in this account, nothing in here to transfer the fund on this particular address. So I will simply click on that. I have copied that one. Now I will click on this login. Let me log into the application. So I'll say Shoaib, I'll say this is the one which has couple of fund, and here I have this. You can see I'm logged into my account, and this much fund I have in this particular wallet address. So what I will do, I will simply transfer the fund, the account I have created. So I'll click on this send. I'll pass the amount which I want to transfer. I'll want to pass something like let's say 3. That's the amount I want to transfer, and let me give the wallet address. And so this is the wallet address on which I have to transfer the fund. I'll click on this transfer, and here the transaction is happening. Just wait. So this will take a little bit of time, and once the transaction will complete, you will get an input. So you can see the transaction is successfully completed. You can click here and you can easily able to verify the transaction here on the Polygon. So still the transaction is in the pending mode. So by the time the transaction is getting confirmed, what I will do is, so things are looking pretty fine. I'm going to show you that how you can import the account. The balance is automatically deducted. Earlier we had 6, now it's 3. Means we have transferred the fund in that particular address we have generated. So what I will do, I'll simply click on this logout, and now have to pass my email ID and the password which we have created recently. So I'll say, what is the email I give? bhai@gmail.com, and here I have to pass the password, and that's the email ID and the password. Click on login, and here we are back into our MetaMask account, and here you will find this much fund we have transferred in this particular address. we have that one. You can see everything is working absolutely fine. So now what I want to do is, so you can see the transfer function is already working absolutely fine, and the account creation is also working fine. So when you will create your account, it will create the private key, it will create the wallet address, it will create the nomic foundations. That's all will create. So now what I want to do is, so if I come back here in the import, so for example, I want to import any token and I want to store here like this. So right now we have these 3 tokens and I want to store any other token. So what I will do, let me open the MetaMask and now let me import the token. So I'll click here and click on here, and you can give the address of the token, you can give the name, so it's SIBA, and that's the name, and you can give the same name as a SIBA. Here it's totally up to you. Okay, that this is what I'm calling to this particular token. If I click on this import, it's going to make the transaction, and you will find that here we have included the token. And you can do tons of things. You can check the history of this particular token, you can fetch the balance, all of things you can do. So the token is added in your wallet. So this is how you can add the token. It's there. Now we have done with this token import, we have done with the send functionality. Now let me show you that if you want to import any wallet address, you can do that as well. So now what I want to do is I want to import the account. So right now I'm using this particular account, has 3 Metacoin, and I want to use something else. So I want to use this very first one. So if I click on that, you can see it's fetching the balance, and here I have this particular amount in this particular one, and here you can able to find all the details. Here you can display all the recent activities which anybody, like the individual, is doing on the MetaMask account. So you can display that as well. And from here you can easily able to click on logout. So if you click on that logout, here you are logged out with the application. So what I have done, I have created this folder MetaMask, and in that we're going to write the entire code for our project. So make sure to open this particular folder in VS Code. Come back here. You can use any code editor, but I'm using Visual Code because it's my favorite. So click on this open and come back to the desktop, and from here you have to select the folder. So here we are in the MetaMask folder. Now the very first thing we have to do is come back here in the Google Chrome and come to the blockchain coder. I have given the starter file and the final code so you guys can get that. So come back to the code section, resource section, and source code section. And from here you can easily able to filter. So click on this recent post, and this is the one which you have to click on that. And from here you will get the final code which we go to build, and you can get the starter file. So in that you will have all the codes, all the assets which is already given to you. Simply copy that URL and come back to the VS Code. So you can see all the relevant information is provided to you, so you can have a look from your end. Now what we can do is simply copy the URL, come back to the VS Code, open up your terminal, and now we have to simply clone the repository. So open up the terminal, type, let's bring this little here, and type git clone, paste the URL, and you have to give this dot. This means that the entire repository will be cloned in the same folder. So hit enter. This is going to clone the repository. You can see we have all the folders and files. Looks pretty good. So this is the git folder. In that you will have all the ideas that what the repository location is. So this is the one, and this is the asset folder we have. Inside that you will find all the assets, including the CSV file and the images we are using. So this is the images we have, and this is the CSV file, the icons, it's already there. So simply close this one, and this is the folder for the API, and that we're going to build the entire API of our MetaMask clone. So open that one. In that you will find couple of folders and files. So this is the API folder. In that you will have this 3 folder: controller, model, and routers. Inside the controller we'll have this auth controller. In that we're going to write the entire logic for our applications, like login, logout, sign up, fetching the accounts, all of things we're going to do in our author controller. Then we have this model. We have 3 different model. So we have the account model, we have the token model, we have the user model. We're going to code it together, and then we have the router, and then we have this 3 different router locations. So this is the API folder we have, and here we have the app.js, and that we're going to do the configuration, and this is the config file. So make sure to have the exact variable. I'll show you that how you can get the database URL and the password from MongoDB. So just be with me. You can see this is what you will get. All you have to do is to replace the string for the database and the password, which I will cover when we start working on the API section. And this is the package.json file. So I want you to install the exact packages. If you install any other version, it's not going to work. If you look at the Express, we are into the latest version. Right now we have 5 or 6, But in this project we are using this particular version because the kind of configuration I'm going to follow, it's going to be based on this particular version. So if you use any update version, it's not going to work and you will have a lot of error. So that's why I have provided the starter file. So you have to install the exact packages. So all of these packages we need. This is the packages. Close this one, and this is the server which we're going to write the code and it's going to start our application. So looks pretty good. So this is the entire Chrome API. Close this one, and here we have this Ether library. So this is the entire library we have used internally, and that's what you have to do. So when you are building extension or when you're building any application, it's always necessary that you have to use the entire library locally. So in that way, what will happen that you don't need to depend on the external resources for fetching the library. So if the location where the library is stored, that website is slow, then your application will not work and it will take time. So it's always important that when you are building an application for the production, you should install the library, have the library in your project, and you can use it from there. And that's what we have here. This is the Feb icon because we need to have an icon so we can display in our browser in the extension field. And this is the manifest file. So in that we're going to write the entire code, all the configuration, including the name, version, descriptions, icons, and the methods, the actions we want to provide. That's all we're going to configure here. Then we have this pop-up HTML, and this is where we're going to write the entire HTML for our project. So we're going to write it together, and here we have the Pop.js file, and this one is the main file. In that we're going to write the entire functionality of our MetaMask clone, all the logic, all the functions. That's all we're going to write it here. This is the style file. In that we're going to write the entire CSS, and this is the readme file. Here you will find some couple of important resources which you can have a look. So you will have the important location, you can have a look from your end. So close this one, and that's the entire starter file. I hope so far everything is clear and you guys have understood that what is the structure we're going to follow. So first we're going to develop this entire extension locally, and then we're going to deploy this extension to our Chrome web store. Okay, so first we're going to start working with the Pop.js file. After that we're going to work on the API, then we're going to work on the CSS, and at the end we're going to work on the HTML, and after that we're going to deploy that. So this particular course is going to be in 4 to 5 parts. Okay, so let's start working on the Pop.js file first, and that's what we're going to work it. Then we're going to work on the API, you can see, and then CSS, and then HTML, and looks pretty good. So let's come here, and now we're going to start working on our Pop.js file. So let's build out all the features and functionality for our extension, including the API calls, generating the private key and the passwords for the MetaMask wallet, all the things. Okay, so this one is the very important part of our MetaMask clone. So make sure to watch this very focusedly to try to understand every single thing we're going to cover in this particular video. Target the DOM. So we'll say document.addEventListener. So what we have to do is we have to, when the browser will reload, we have to load our script. So we'll say DOM, it's come here, remove this, we'll say DOM content load, and we have to call this functions, and in that we have to target all the element. So like we'll have to attach the add event listener on the button. So whatever button we're going to attach the functionality, that's all we're going to target right in this DOM content loaded. And that's how you have to follow when you are using plain vanilla JavaScript, because we are not using any framework. So come here, let's target let's say in that we going to target the elements on which we have to attach the function. Okay, so far so good. Now we can come here, let's define our variables. The state variable we're going to manage, because we are providing multiple accounts, we are providing multiple networks, so that's all we have to manage. So let's define a couple of state variable, and that's how you can define when you are working in our vanilla JavaScript. So let's call it state variable. Then we have to define the very first variable is the provider, and this provider can be hard coded or it can be dynamic, it's totally up to you, but in our case we are providing multiple provider. So by default I will go with a fixed value, and if user want to change the network they can do that. So let's keep it empty string. I'll tell you how you can get the string for the provider. Then we have to take another one, we'll say let provider, and we'll say this private key, and we'll take this address. So these are the three data we need, because the account will change, the private key will also change. So that looks pretty good. Now we have to write all the functions. So let's write down the entire function which we're going to create, and then we're going to build the logic inside the function. So let's call it function, and let's build the function. So we'll say function handler. So this is the one function we're going to have in our project. Then let's write the second function. This will be called check balance, and all we have to do is to pass the address of the user into this check balance function, and it's going to give us the balance. So that's the second function. Let's write the third function. It's called get open network. So this will allow us to open the network component. And let's write the fourth one. This will say get selected network. So this will allow us to select the network which we want to connect. Let's call the other function is called set network, and this will set the network. Let's try the another one which we'll call logging user. So this function is allow user to log in into our application. Let's write the another one called create user, and now we'll come down. We have to write the other one which will be the open create. So this function will allow us to open the create model, so user can put their credential and they can create their accounts. Let's write the another function, and this will what we should call, we'll say sign up. And let's write another one. This will call login. Let's come down. Let's write another one. This will call logout. So this will allow user to log out. And let's write another one. This will say open transfer, and this will open the transfer component. Then we have to write another one. This will say go back. So this function will use to go back into the previous component. That's why I've given this name. Let's write another one. This will call the open import component, and this will be called, let's say, import go back. And let's write another function. This will call, let's say, function open active. So this will open the activity component. And now we have to write another one. This will say open assets. So this will give us all the assets which we going to fetch from our database, or the user will stake in our MetaMask clone. Then we'll write another one. This will say home page. So this function will take us back to the home page. And now we're going to write another one. This will call the, let's say, open import model. We'll come down, we'll write another one. This will call, let's say, close import model, because one will open, we need to have another function which can close. Let's write another one. This will say add token. So user can add their token which will reflect in our MetaMask. I write another one. This will say add accounts, so we can add the account. Let's write another one. This will say my function, and this function will allow us to reload all the data at the time of MetaMask open. Okay, so whenever someone will open our extension, this is the function we're going to trigger, and it's going to load the entire data. This one is going to be pretty huge. This function we have to write call copy address. So this is pretty simple. User can copy the address and from the MetaMask, and now we have to get the last function which call change account. So this function allow user to change their wallet addresses, so they can change from account A to account B. So it looks pretty good. You can see we have a lot of function to create. Here we're going to call all the element on which we have to trigger the events. That's all we're going to cover. And here we are managing the state. So we have this 4 variables, and we have all of this function, handler, check balance. That's tons of function we have here. Hope so far things are making sense to all of you guys. And now we're going to start working on the elements. So we're going to target all the elements. So far we haven't done anything in our HTML, but I already know that on which ID, on which element I'm going to trigger the event. So that's why I'm going to write the entire logic first, and then we're going to simply attach the function. We have to simply pass the ID into the elements, and we will have the function. So let's target all the element, and make sure to give the exact ID or the class name which I'm providing here. If you not provide this, you will have an error, because this is the exact ID we're going to attach in our DOM element. So looks pretty good. Now come here. Let's zoom a bit, and now first we'll say document.getElement by ID, and we have to target the first ID, which is account listed. So this is the ID I'm going to give, and we're going to attach add event listener, and we're looking for the click event, and we're going to call this particular function hand change account. Okay, this is the function we have. Come down, this is the function we're going to call it. So that's how we're going to trigger the functions on the click event. So that's the very first DOM element we have connected. Now simply grab this one and paste couple of times, because this is the exact model we have to follow. All we have to do is to pass the ID and the function will work fine. Now let's change this ID to user address, and we have to change the function name to copy address. Change this one as well. So this one will say transfer funds, and this one will say handler. So these are the three component we have target. Let's copy this part, copy this one, and paste couple of time. So like we are done with this. Now we have to change the ID. So this will call header network, and here we're going to call the function get open network. This will say network item, and this will say get selected network. This will call add network, and we have to call this to set network, and this will be our login account, and this will be the login user. So simply save it, copy this one, and paste couple of time. Looks pretty good. And now we have to simply change the name and the function. So here we are. Here we have to come and we have to change the name. So we'll call let site account create, and we have to create the function. It's called the function create user. Then we have to come here and we have to change the ID to open create, and in this we're going to call this function open create, and we'll call this one sign up, and this will be the sign up, and this one is login up, and this will be the login. So these are the function we have. Now simply grab one more time and paste couple of time. Let's change the ID logout, and we'll call this logout function, and we have this open transfer, let's say transfer, and we have to call this function called open transfer. Come here, change this to go back, and we'll call this go back function. Now we have to change this ID. We'll say open import, and this will be the open import. So it looks pretty good. So far we have targeted all the elements. Let's target the one which are left. Come here, bring this down, and now we have to change the ID. So this will be the, let's say open, let's call it open assets. Here we're going to call it open asset. This will be the open activity, and this will be our open activity. Come here, change the ID to go home page, and this will be the function home page, go home page. And now we have to change this ID. It will say open account import, and here we have to call this import model. So copy this one and paste here, and now we have to change the name. So this will be our, let's say close import account, and we have to simply change this one to close import model. Come back here, we have to target the add new token, and this will be say add token, and this one will be our add new account, and we have to call this add account and remove this one. So we have taken all the component and we have attached the function on the IDs. All we have to do is to simply attach this ID into the elements, and we'll have the functionality. So hope so far everything is clear to all of you guys. So this is the first element, this is the second one, this is the third one. We have the open network, we have the select network, we have the set network, login user, create, open create, sign up, login, logout, open transfer, go back, import, open assets, activity, go home page, import model, and we have the close input model, we have the token, let's give a space, and we have the add new. So this is the entire element we have target, and that's the only thing we have to do. As for we have to target the element. Now come here, so open this, let's have a look one more time, and everything's look good to me. Now we need to come here and simply go to this Alchemy, because we need the provider so we can easily able to interact with the blockchain. So click on the sign up. I have already created my account. Make sure to create your own account, and I have shown it, explained this tons of time in the previous project, so you can check other project, and that's a very fairly simple process. All you have to do is to verify the emails and provide you all the data, and you will have your account. Now come here, I'm going to simply log in, and once you will log in and once you create your account and log in to the Acme, this is the dashboard you will find. You can see I have created a lot of project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my default network, which is going to be a Polygon, and I will simply copy this HTTP. So here you have three methods: API key, HTTP, and WebSocket. So all of these are very fairly simple one, but we're going to use the HTTP one because that's very easy. So simply copy that one and come back here in the code and simply paste here, because we are focusing on the Polygon Mumbai, and that's where I'm going to do the testing. So that's what we have, and that's the exact thing you have to do in any network. Okay, so that's the provided URL we have. And what I will do is I have this 3 state variable. So for the time being, I guess I can comment this provider. Okay, we'll do that. Come back here in the handle function, and what I can do is let's write the entire function for this particular one. Okay, so now let's start writing the function for our handler. So what we have to do is first we have to target the DOM. So we'll say document.get element by ID, and in that we have to get the particular ID. So we'll say transfer and transfer center, and we have to set display to none, flex. And why we are doing so, because when someone will call this function, we have to display our loader. Okay, so we are simply setting our loader, and then we're going to do all the logic. So we have to show the loader, and we'll come down here, and now we have to take the variable. So we'll take the amount, and that will come from the input field. So get element by ID, and it will have the ID amount, and we'll call this value. So this will give us the amount. Let's bring it back and simply replicate it, paste here, and we have to get the simple address where we want to transfer the fund, and we'll say address. So these are the two data we have. Now come down here. So if I come back here in the MetaMask, let me log in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my private key and the address as a reference in the function, so we can test it with the code. So you can come back to the MetaMask, and you can see this is the account we have. So what I will click on this 3 dot, go to the accounts, and from here you can able to access your private key. So I'll simply pass my private key. I will simply copy that one, come back here, and I'm going to take a variable, and I'm going to keep my private key right up here. I'm showing you my private key, but I don't want you to utilize it because this is for the testing purpose. And so I hope that thing you guys will not do. So this is the private key, and here I'm going to paste this particular one. So paste it, copy this one and paste it. So this is the private key I have. Let me give this variable name. Now what I'm going to do, I will take the address, which is going to be where I'm going to transfer the fund as a test. So I will come here, and I'm not going to take this particular address. I'm going to take the other address. So this time I'm not using the MetaMask account, because once I use the MetaMask account, the balance will be gone. Okay, so here I have created an account and I have imported, and that's what I'm going to use it. So I have a couple of meta in this, so I will simply copy the address, come back here and paste. So this is the private key and test account we have used. So that looks pretty good so far. Now come here, we have to simply do one thing. We have to take this provider, and now we have to build the provider so we can communicate with the blockchain and we can send the transaction. So we're going to use this particular library. So we'll come here, we'll take a variable called provider. We'll use new ether. So we already have the ether package. And that package we're going to connect into our HTML document. In that way, the entire ether library will be available into our global object, and from there we can easily able to access. So that's what I'm doing here. We have the entire library as a global object. Once we connect the library in our HTML, and from there we can have it. So we have this new ether, we'll call this provider, and in that we have to pass this Here you have a couple of methods. You have the JSON RPC batch provider, JSON RPC provider, JSON RPC signer. So you can use any one of it, but I'm going to use the most regular one, JSON RPC provider. In that we have to pass the provider URL. So we already have this URL. Remove this. I don't know where it come from. Now I have to pass the provider URL. Simply copy this one and paste here. So in this way, we'll have the access of our provider and we are connected with the blockchain network, which is a Polygon. Looks good to me so far. Now come here. We'll take a variable. We'll create the wallet. So we have to create the wallet so we can take the transaction. So we'll take this wallet and we can do that very easily. So we're going to call this ether package. So we'll say new ether dot wallet, and in that we have to pass two data. We have to pass the private key of the wallet we want to use. We have to use the private key and the provider, and we have to use the private key and the provider. So if you want to use any account, all you have to do is to pass the private key in that particular field and you are connected with this particular address account. So let's pass the address private key of the wallet, and we have to pass the provider. So let's remove this. We'll call it this is the private key I have taken, but this private key I'm going to take it from as a global, not from a local one, because user will connect it and this data will be updated in our global field, and from there we have to update, not as a fixed data. So this is the one I'm going to take it and paste here, and we have to pass the provider. So this true data I have taken as a reference, so you can test it locally, but we are getting this private key variable from the global object, and that's what we have here. Now let's comment this out, because we already have a provider URL and we can go with that for the time being. So that's the private key and the provider we have. So we got the wallet connected. Now what we have to do is we have to take a variable called transaction, and in that we have to set the variables. So we'll say we have to build an object. So we'll say tx, and let's build an object. First is the address where we want to transfer, and the second is going to be the value we want to transfer. Is going to be the ether.utils.parse ether, and that we have to pass the amount, because this transaction is going to be happen in terms of ways. So that's the thing you have to keep in mind. So that's the amount and that's the address we are passing. So once the transaction is getting complete, we have to do a couple of things. So first we'll take a little bit variable. So we'll say anchor. So once the transaction will complete, we have to display that see the transaction message. So user can click on the button and will take them to the Polygon scan or any other scan, so they can verify their transaction. So we're going to target that. We'll say document.getElement by ID, and we have to target the ID. We'll link. So we have the element. Now we have to pass the URL, and this URL we're going to populate dynamically, not hard coded. So we'll say href, and we have to simply build that. So by default we're going to say some link URL. This is the default value. Now we're going to take this wallet, because in that we have the entire object. So from there we can easily able to send the transaction. So this method is available in our valid object. So you can simply log it and you can check the entire object that what are the methods are available on the wallet. But we're going to go with this send transaction because we have to transfer the fund. In that we have to send this transaction object, and then we have to wait for the response, because it will give us the promise back. So we have to resolve those promise. So we'll say then, and we'll say transaction object, and in that we have to simply, that's pretty easy. Let's wrap this one in bracket so we'll have no issues. Let's bring this down. Now we can target the console.log, so you can able to see the entire transaction object. So we'll say ts hash, and in that we'll pass the transaction object. Looks good. And the hash, pretty good. Now come down here, we'll target the document.getElement by ID, and in that we have to get the ID. So we'll say transfer center, and we have to simply change the style to display. That's equal to going to be none. So we have to hide our transaction loader. So once we hide that one, we have to simply update the data. So what we can do is we can come here, we'll say const anchor lig, and document get element. Let's remove this one, and we'll say document.getElement by ID, and we have to get the ID, which is a link, and Now we'll take this document dot get element by id, and we have to target the link, and we have to simply say style display equal to block. Pretty good. So our link will display, and that would be fine. So you can see this is the first, we are setting our loader, then we are getting our variables, the data. This is the test data we have. Now we have the provider. Here we are building the connection with the wallet, then the transaction object, and this is the entire data we are displaying. So far so good. Hope everything is making sense to all of you guys. So that's the only thing you have to do in this handler function. You can close that one, and I want you to come and have a look one more time, try to understand that what we have done. And here we can see that we have imported this ether package, but we are not going to use it. Simply remove this one. Looks pretty good. Now we can start working on the next function, check balance. So let's come here. We'll target this const provider, and we have to call the ether package. In that we have to call the provider, and then we have to simply pass our URL. So here we have the provider. Now we'll come down here, and we're going to take this provider dot get balance, the method we are available in this, and we have to pass the address. So we'll have the balance, and then we have to simply resolve the promise because it will return. So we'll say balance, and we'll take the address from the input. So this function we're going to call into our my function. So this function will run internally. All we have to do is to pass the address, and it will give us the balance of this particular address. So here we have to do a couple of things. So first we're going to do is we're going to take a variable called balance, and in eth, and we're going to target the ethers dot utils dot, and we have to convert it. So format ether, and in that we have to pass the balance. So this will be a convertible. Now we can come here, we'll take this document dot get element by id, and we have to display the balance. We'll target the account balance, and once we target that, we have to simply change that inner HTML equal to the balance. Take a template tutorial, and in that we have to pass the balance in eth. So that's how we can display, and you can, I'm just hard coding this data, but you can make it dynamic. But I'll go with the polygon. So that's the data we are updating. Looks pretty good to me, and pretty good. Let's give a command. Now let's target this document dot get element by id, and now we have to target it to this user address, and we'll say inner HTML is going to be the user address. Okay, so it will reflect the address, and we have to slice it down because the address is pretty huge. So we'll display only 15 characters. So that's the entire check balance function. Pretty simple, not that complicated. So far so good. Now close this one. Now we can start working on the next function, get open network. So this function will open the network model. Okay, say open and close, that's what it will do. So what we'll do is we're going to target that. So we'll say document dot get element by id, and that we have to target the network, and it will say style dot display is going to be block, because by default it will be none. So that's the only thing it will do. It will open the network element. Close this one, come here, and looks pretty good. Now we have to work on the second function, get selected network. So in that we're going to take the event. So when someone will click on the selected network, we have to trigger the event, and on the base of that selected network we have to set our provider. So that's the logic we have here. So we'll take a variable called element, and we'll say document dot get element by id, and we have to select that particular element. So we'll say selected network. So once we have the element, then we have to get this element inner HTML, and we have to update. So we'll say element dot target inner HTML. What we are doing here, we are taking the selected network and we are displaying its name in our UI component. So that's what we are doing here. Now come back here, we'll say if element dot target inner HTML is equal to our Ethereum provider, when someone select the Ethereum mainnet, then we have to set the string of our RPC URL to the Ethereum. So that's what we're going to do here. So we'll take this provider, and we're going to simply provide the URL of our Ethereum. So to get that, all you have to do is come here in the Acme, and type here, not in that, come here in the browser and type RPC anchor, ANKR, anchor polygon. Hit enter, and here you will find all the RPC URL for the different blockchain network. So you can see here we are in the Polygon, and I'm going to select this particular mainnet, select this one, copy this one, and come back. And here we are focusing on the Ethereum, but I copied on Polygon. So what I will do, I'll come back here in Alchemy, and here we have that, close this one, and here we have the project Ethereum mainnet. Click on that, and from here I'm going to get the string and paste here. So this one is for the Ethereum mainnet, and this is the exact thing I have to do for all the different network. So we'll say else if, we'll say e.target.inner HTML is equal, so this time it's equal to Polygon. One is the Polygon. So let's come back here, and from here we can get it, copy this one, this is the mainnet, and that's what we have to pass it here. So here you can see Polygon mainnet is that. Now we have to do for the Mumbai. So we'll say Mumbai, and well, simply this is the Mumbai we have already copied, and that's what we have to simply paste here. Okay, this is for the Mumbai. Now copy this one and paste here, and the next network we have is Gorilla. So what I will do is simply change this text to Gorilla, so GOERILA, and this will be the test network. And now we have to get this. So we can come back here in the, let's say we can come back to the browser. Here we are, and now we have to search for the Gorilla. So we'll say Gorilla, hit enter, click on this this link, and here we'll have all the networks. So we'll have mainnet, testnet, Gorilla, Sofali. So we'll select this one, Gorilla, copy, and that's what we have to paste here. Simply replace the string. And now we have the last one, simply copy and paste here, and this will be our Sofali network. So POLIA, Sofali test network, and we have to simply change that. So click on this, get the string, and replace it here. So that's the entire provider. You can use anyone. Looks pretty good. Okay, now what we have to do is, once someone will select the network, we have to close the drop down model. So that's what we have to hide it. So we'll say document dot get element by ID, and we have to get this components. We'll say network, and we have to say style dot display equal to none, and that's the same thing we have to do in all of this. So simply copy and paste here, and paste here. Pretty good. So save it, and at the end we're going to simply console log out the provider URL. So we'll say provider URL. So that's the entire function we have written for selected network. Okay, for different, but primarily we are focusing on the Polygon. So that's the entire function we have here. Close this one, and looks pretty good. And now we have to work on this set network. So let's write the function. So first we have to target the element. So get element by ID. This is the ID we have going to assign. So we'll say network, we'll say set style display is going to be none. So this will close that one, and now work on the login user. So what we'll do is we'll open this one, we'll target the element, we'll say document dot get element by ID. So we have to get the created account, and in that what we have to do is we have to change the style to display, we'll say none. So select that, paste here, and we have to change the ID to this login user, and we're going to simply say block. So we're going to close this one, create account, and we have to open this component. Looks pretty good. Now we have to come here, we have to simply do one thing, copy this entire one, because that's what we're going to follow here, and here we have to change this to block, and this will be the none. So in that way user can switch from login user to create account. Now looks pretty good, and grab this one, and that's the same thing we have to do here. What we can do is let's change this to none, and this will be the block, and here we have to change the ID to create pop. Okay, looks pretty good. Now grab this one, we have already taken that one, to come back to the sign up, and this one is going to be pretty huge one. So what we have to do is come back here. We have to take a variable because we need the data from the user input, so we can pass and create their account and make a API request. So we'll target this sign up name, and it will come from the value from the input field. Simply copy and replicate a couple of times. Change this one is going to be the email. This will be the email as well, will be the password, and this will be the password. This one going to be called password confirm. You can add as many input field. This is the basic structure which I'm following. This will be the password confirm. So we have this 3 input field data from the user, and now what we have to do is we can simply come down here. We can target the element. We'll say document get element by ID, and we have to target this field. So first thing, once the user provide all of this data, we have to hide our form component. So we'll say style.display is equal to none, because we're going to make an API request along with that. So here we're going to display our loader. So we'll say center, and we'll say block. So this is the loader will display. So that looks pretty good. Come back here, and we're going to take a variable called wallet, and here we're going to generate the wallet, the address, and the private key and the nomic. So all these 3 data we're going to create when the user will try to create his account. So we'll take this ether dot wallet, and we'll call this particular method which is available create random, and this will generate the Ethereum account for them. Here we have to check if wallet dot address is there, then we have to do and make an API request, all the logics. So inside that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's console log out the entire wallet object. In that you can able to have a look that what are the objects is available to you and how you can store the data, or you can simply ignore. It's totally up to you. So that's the data we're going to object, and here we're going to make an API call because we're going to store all of this data into our database. So you have two options. You can allow them to call the function which can store the information in the smart contract. No, it's not possible, because like to call the smart contract they need to have a wallet. So it's better to store the information in the database, and make sure that your database is 100% secure, because this private key is very important. If you look at the architecture of MetaMask, they're keeping your private key very securely. So that's the exact logic you have to follow. So you can do one thing. You can encrypt the private key in the database so no one can have it. You can encrypt the private key and store in the database. That's the one thing you can do, and that's what I'm going to do in the API section, where we're going to encrypt the password of the user. So just follow along with me. Here we have to build the API call. So first we need to take this variable. We'll take this URL. So this is the endpoint we're going to build. So HTTP, and it's going to be connected to the localhost 3000. On that our API is going to be run, and this is the resource location. So API/v1 user, and we'll call this sign up. So this is the endpoint for creating user into our MetaMask. So that's the API endpoint, and now we have to simply take the data. So the data we want to send in our API is the name and email, and we have the password, and then we have the password confirm, then we have the address of the user, the newly address created, which is available in the wallet address. Then we'll take the private key. Make sure to give the exact name which I'm giving here, because when we're going to build our backend model and we're going to take the data from the user, this is the exact data we're going to provide it. So we'll have the wallet private key, and we have this nomic, and which is also available in this wallet dot nomic phrase. We have this available. Looks pretty good. So far so good. We have the entire data which we want to send into our model. Looks pretty good. Now we can simply come here. So what we have done, we have taken this, done this. This is the wallet we have created, and then we are taking the data into our data fields. And now we have to simply make a request to the API. So we're going to call it with the help of Axios. You can use it any other, but fetch is a very simple one, so I'll use that. So we'll call it pass the URL, and in that we have to pass the header. So we'll pass this method to post, because obviously we have to send data in our backend. Then we have to set the header. So in the header we have to set the content type. So it will be our content type, and it's going to be application JSON. So that's the content type, because we are sending the data in a JSON format. So that's the handler we have. Now we have to send the data in the body. So we'll say JSON stringify, and we have to pass the data in that. Looks pretty good. And once it will be successfully send the data, or it will fail, it will send us response back. So that's the response we have to catch. We'll say then response, and say response, and we have to simply convert that response to a JSON so we can read it. And on that we have to call this then, because it will return a promise. We'll say result, and in this result we'll have all the data which we're going to send back to the user after a successful account creation. So here we have to format the data. So what we have to do is we have tagged this document.get element by ID, and we'll call this, let's say we'll can call that one. So we'll say something like what ID we have targeted, create address. We'll say inner HTML, and we have to display the address of the user is created. Simply replicate it, and here we have to simply update all of the data. So this will be the address, this will be the private key, because we have to display this back to the user. We'll say private key, and this will be the, let's target that one to unique. Phrase, this will be our center, means we have to change the styling, we have to hide our loader. So we'll say style dot display to be none. Simply copy this one and change this to, and now we have to simply target. So we'll say block, and this will be the account data, and here we have to change the ID to sign up, and this will be the none. So that's the entire thing we have to do in the successful account creation. Looks pretty good. So that looks good. Come back here. Now we have to take a variable called user wallet, because this data we are getting, we have to store into our local host. So from there we can easily able to verify and fetch the information, and we can display in our MetaMask that which account is connected with the MetaMask, what are the balance, everything and all. So let's build that object which we want to store in our local host. So we'll say user wallet address is gonna be the wallet address. Then we have to get the private key, and the private key is also available there in the wallet private key. Then we have to get the nomic. This one is optional, but you can keep it, so I'll keep it like it, and we can display this one. You can store as many information as you want, it's totally up to you, but I'm going to go with this 3 one because these are the most important one. Now we have to take a variable called JSON object, and we have to convert this into a JSON format so we can store it. So we'll call it stringify, and we're going to pass our entire user wallet. So looks pretty good. Now we have to call this particular method local storage dot set item. We have to give the name, so make sure to give whatever name you want, because this is the name we're going to use to put data or fetch data. So we'll call it user wallet, and we have to send the entire JSON object. So in this way the data is available into our local storage. And now we have to call this document.get element by ID, and we have to go to the home page after everything's happened, and in that we're going to simply say display block. So we have to open the home page. So what will happen that when this function will get called, everything is get done, then it will set the data in our local state, then it's going to go back to the home page. So looks good. And now we have to simply reload the browser, so everything will start from fresh. Pretty good. So that looks pretty good to me. Now you can see it's a pretty huge function for sign up. We are calling this, then we are creating the wallet, then passing the data to the API. We are converting that, then we are resolving the response, setting the data into our components, then we are using this to store the data into our localhost, and then reloading the browse. Now what we can do, we have to catch if anything goes wrong. So we'll say catch method, and that is available very easily in that we have the error, and we're going to simply console log out the entire error. Provide this one. So it looks pretty good. This is the entire sign up function we have. Pretty good. No issues we have so far. Hope you guys have followed what I have done, Now we can start working on the other function, which is a login one. So far things are pretty good. Let's open this one. Let's target the element document.get element by id. So we have to target the login form, and we have to simply display none. Copy that one, paste here, and this will be the center. We have to open the loader. Then we have to call this const email. We have to get the data from the input field. We need the email and the id, email and the password. So we'll get the value, copy that one and paste here. This will be the password, and this will be the password. Come back here. We have to make a call to our API. So we'll say URL. This is the endpoint we're going to use it. So we'll say HTTP local host. This is the resource location v1 version 1 user and login. So this is the method, the endpoint we're going to create. Now we have to build the data we want to send. So we have to send the email and the password so we can verify that user. So that's the data we have. Now we have to build all the methods. So we'll have to pass the URL, then we have to set the header. So the method we're going to call is the post one. After that we have to send the header. So we have to define the content type. The same thing we have to do, content type, and it's going to be the application JSON /JSON. Now we have to send the body and the data we have to convert it into a stringify, then pass the data. It looks pretty good. So this is the method, and now we have to resolve the promises, the response back. So we'll take that, we'll say this response.json, then we're going to call on then, and we'll say result, and we're gonna simply do one thing. So we're going to simply console log out the entire result. You can able to have a look, and we're going to define what data we want to send back to the user when we'll work on the API section. So we'll take a variable called user wallet, because we need to store the user object in the local storage so we can make our MetaMask functionable, because it's going to fetch the data from the local storage, and on the base of that it will fetch the function. It's going to fetch the user whether he connected or not. So that's the object we have to set. So we're going to take this. So we'll take the address which is already there in the result, and this is what we're going to send back as a response. So we have this address, then we have the private key which is there in the result, data.user.private key. Then we have our mnemonic, and that's there. That's a very basic one. Okay, so this is the object we have. Now we can come down here, we can simply take this and convert it into a JSON. So we'll say JSON stringify, and we have to take this user wallet, and then we have to call the local storage, and we have to set the data into a local storage. So we'll say user wallet, and we have to give the object the data JSON object. So this will set the data, and we have to reload the browser at the end. Means that's a successful login for the user. And here we have to catch an error. So if anything goes wrong, so we have to catch. So we'll simply console log out the entire object. And by the way, if you want to master API development, then I want to tell you, take this particular course. In that I've explained every single thing which you have to know to become an API developer, how to set an environment, how to manage different type of error, production error and development error created by user or error created by code. Everything is explained. So after this, make sure to take this particular course, API development. It's a 13-hour course. It will teach you every single thing about the backend development. We have set all of the things, and that's pretty much for our login function. So we are getting the variable, passing this, and setting all the data into our local storage. Close this one. Now we have to work on the logout, and that's a fairly easy function we have to work on. All we have to do is to remove the data from the local storage. So we'll target this. Let's say local dot to remove item, and we have to pass the key pair, so user wallet, and this will allow user to log out from the application. After it's removed, we have to simply reload the browser, and that's it. That's the logout function. Pretty simple. Okay, now we have to work on the open transfer. So this one is also pretty easy one. So we'll say document.get element by id. We have to take the element transfer form We'll say style.display equal to be block, and it will open that. And now we have to simply close the other open components. We'll say home page, this will be the none. Okay, so it will open the transfer component and it will close the home component. So that looks pretty good. Copy that one, and what we can do is come back here in the go back function. Here we have to change this to simply none, and this will be the block. Okay, this is the go back function. Now that looks pretty good, and this is the open import. Simply open this one, and here we have to change the ID. So we'll say import token, and this will be the same. It will open the component, it will close the home component. And now we have to come back here and paste here, and this time we have to simply change this to import token, and this will be the token none, and this will be the block. Okay, so far so good. Now that's the import one. Let's open this activity one, and here we have to target the activity component, and we have to open it, and this will be the asset. So far good. Now this one is open asset, and paste here. Here we have to target this, make this to none, and this will be the block for opening the component. Everything will make sense, just follow along with me. We have just written this function to open different component and closing different component. That's a fairly simple functions we are building here. So that looks good. Come here and paste here, and this will be called create pop-up, and here we have to call home page. So this will be none, and this will be block. Close this one, and what else? Close this one, and come back to the here import model, and this will be our, let's say, import account, and this will be the home one. So it's going to be same. Copy this one and paste here. So that looks good. Open import model is done. Now we have to work on the close import model. So for that we have to open this one and paste here, and here we have to change the ID. So this will be the none, and this will be the block. That's one, because okay, because we don't need to change the ID, we have to simply open and close it. Looks good. So that's the one we have. Now we have to work on the add, and this one is going to be a quite big one because we have to make an API request, we have to get the data from the user. So let's work on it. So first we have to take a variable called address, and we have to get the data from the user. So get element by ID, this will call token address. We have to get the value. Simply copy that one, and we need 3 value data. So we need the name, this will say name, this will be the symbol. So we have all of these 3 data. Come here, we have to make an API call because we have to store this data into our backend server. Let's build the URL. So this is the endpoint we're going to build in our API section. We'll say 3000 API slash v1, and this is the token resource we have, and then we're going to simply call this create token. Then we have to take this data, because these are the data we have to send. Name, so we have to send the address and the symbol. Come here, here we have to build the fetch request method. So we'll pass the URL, and we have to set the header. This is the post method. Then build the header, and then we have to set the content type. The same thing we have to do here. So it's application slash JSON, and here we have to send the body, the data. So we'll say stringify and stringify, and we'll pass the data. And now we have to receive the response. So we'll say then response.jsons, it will return a callback function. Result, and will return a callback function. And here we can simply log out the response, the result the user got, and after a successful that, we have to simply reload the browser, pretty much, and then we have to catch if anything goes wrong. You can display a notification, but I just want to make it things simple. So in that way, the data will store in the backend and is going to fetch, and we're going to display and render that. So that's a very simple one. Calling this method, and we are simply checking that. So that's the add token function we have. Now let's call add account function. So this will allow the user to add their account to the MetaMask if they have an existing account. So we'll say private key, and this key will come from the input document.getElement by ID. We'll say add account private key, and we'll get this from value. So we have the private key. Now we have to take this const provider, so we can get this new ether provider, and we'll say JSON RPC, and then we have to pass the provider URL. So we got the provider. Now we can come back here and we'll say let's wallet. We need to get the wallet, and in that we have to pass the private key and the provider, so we can able to find the balance and address, all of the things. You can check that what are things are available in the wallet. Now we have to get the URL. So this is the endpoint we're going to build in our API section. So let's build it here. So it's going to be a local storage 3000, and the same instruction we are following here as well. So API/v1 version 1, and this is the resource location we have, account and create account. So this is the URL. Now we can come here. We'll say const data. We have to pass the data, private key, and because of the wallet we have the access of the address, wallet.address. These are the two things we have to keep, and then we have to simply call this fetch matches. We have to pass the URL. We have to set the header. So this one is the post one. Then we have to set the handler, and then we have to set the content type. Okay, application/JSON, and we can come here. We'll set the body, so it will be a JSON.stringify, and we have to pass the data, and then we have to receive the response. It will come in the form of promises, so we have to resolve that. So we'll say response. It takes a callback function. We're going to call this response.json. On that we have to call this then method, and we'll say result, and it's need a callback function. And in that, what we have to do is we have to simply say console.log the entire result, and we can come here. We have to receive if anything goes wrong, and we will log out the entire error. So that looks pretty good. This is the entire function we have to write for add account. So you can see what we have done. We have taken the private key, then we have used the ether packages to get the address of that particular private wallet address, and then we are storing the information to our backend, the private key and the wallet address. So that's a fairly simple thing we have done here. Close this one. Now we have to work on one of the biggest function, my function, and this function will call when someone will open the extension, and we have to fetch all the information. So we have to fetch the information for our local storage, backend, all of things we have to do here. So first we have to do is we have to simply come up here. What we can do, we'll take a variable called star, and we have to get the information for our local storage. So we'll say get element by ID, and this is the key pair we have given user wallet. So this will give us the data. Now we have to convert that data. So we'll say pass object. We'll use this JSON dot parse, and in that we have to pass this entire object. It will have the object. We'll say if pass object is dot address, means we have the address is available into our local storage, then we have to call this function. If the object is not there in the local storage, then we don't want to call it. So we'll say document.getElement by ID, and we have to simply say logging user dot style is going to be display none. So we have to hide the login user component, and we have to simply open the home component where he can able to find all the methods like balance, addresses, transfer, import, all of things, because he's already there and logged in, means logged in. Then we have to take this private key, and we have to set that to the global one. So this is the private key we have taken as a global object, global variable, and that's what we are updating here. We have to update the address as well as a global. Okay, and now we can come here. We have to take this particular check balance, and then we have to pass this user address so we can fetch the balance of his. So you can see this is the address we have taken, and that what will return the balance of the user. Now we can come here. We'll say const token render. So this will allow us to render the token. We're going to fetch the information from our backend, and we're going to render in our MetaMask. So we'll say document.get query selector, and we have to select the assets. Once we have that one, we're going to take this account render, and it's going to be the document.query selector, and it will say the account list. So these are the two components we are targeting, elements we are targeting based on the query selector. Now we have to do is, now we have to simply make a API call. So this is the endpoint we're going to call it. So come here, take a variable called URL, and this will be our HTTP and localhost 3000 API /v1 /token resource and all token. So this will give us all the token user have selected. Pass the URL and set the header. Okay, this is the basic convention we are following. So we'll say .then, and we'll take the response. It will take the callback function. We have to convert the data into a JSON format, and then we have to receive the response and get the data. So we'll have the data, and we'll simply say let element is equal to empty, because we have to render the HTML, and in that HTML the data would be there, like addresses will be there. So what we'll do, take this, we'll say data.token, and we're going to simply loop over it. So we'll say map element like token, and here we have to build the HTML. So what I will do, I will take this div. What I can do is come here and bring this one, take a element plus concatenate, and in that we will write the entire HTML. So we'll take the div, it will have a class. We'll say asset item. Let's close this one div and open this one. We'll take this image, and in that I will display the icon. You can display whatever you want. We'll display our logo, and we'll say asset item image. It will also have a couple of properties. So it will have a source. So we have to take this particular source image /asset. Inside the assets folder we have all the images, and from there we are getting this blockchain coders.png. so this is the image I'm getting. If you come back here in the asset, this is the image you will have, and that's how we can access. So we have that image. Now we have to set the alt tag. It's going to be an empty. So this is the image. Now we can come here, we'll take a spam, and I'm gonna simply close that one, and inside that we have to display, close the span, and in that we have to simply display the address. So we'll say token.address, and we have to slice it down to, let's say, 15. So we can display the user address. Now we have to display the other data. So like we can come here and we have to take this, we'll say token.symbol. So the token symbol, you can define tons of data. So that's the only thing we have to do. Now we can come here, and now we have to simply render the HTML, and that's how we can do it. So that's pretty simple. Okay, so this is how we can dynamically generate the HTML element and render in our component. Now we have to simply catch if anything goes wrong. So we'll have this, we'll say console.log error, and this is the entire fetch request we are making and rendering the data dynamically. Hope things are making sense to all of you guys, and you guys have got what we have done here. Now we can come here, and now we can build the second API request. So let's call fetch, pass the URL here. So this is the endpoint we're going to call it, localhost /3000 API /v1 /account /all accounts. So first we have taken all the token. Now this is the accounts. We'll say then response is take a callback function called response.json. On that we have to call this then method. So we have to resolve the promises. We'll say data, it will take a callback function. In that we have to do the same thing we have done above. So we'll take a variable as a accounts. In that we'll take this data.map.accounts, and we'll take this map. In that we'll say, let's say
account and index. It will take this callback function and looks pretty good to me. Now come here, and that we have to take this the element we have created, and now we have to simply concatenate, and we have to build the HTML. Pretty simple. We'll take a div. Again, we have to close the div. Let's assign a class. We'll say list. In that, we have to take a p tag and we have to close it. Inside that, we have to display the data. So the data would be, we have inside this element I. So the number of the account is 1, and now we have the second data, which is actually the account. So we'll have a class called account value, and we'll have an ID, because when someone will click on this account, we have to get this data attribute and we have to change that. So that's why we are assigned this data address, and in that we have to pass the address of the account. That looks good. And here we have this data dot private key, and we have to pass the private key as well in the data attribute. So we'll say private key. Inside that, we have to display the address of the user, and we have to slice it down to 25 characters. Pretty good, pretty simple. So we are build the HTML. Now we have to simply render the component. So here you can see it's accounts, and here it's an accounts, and provide this, and that looks pretty good. Now we have to simply render it. We'll say account render HTML, and we have to pass the accounts. That's it. And then we have to catch if anything goes wrong. That's a fairly simple thing. We'll console log out the error. So that's how we are fetching the data and rendering in our MetaMask. Okay, API calls building the HTML, then again API calls building the HTML, and then rendering it. Looks good. So far things are looking pretty good. We have no issues. And then we have to simply console log out the entire private key. So this will show that user is logged in. So let's close this one. So this is the entire function we have, and now we have to work on the last two function, and I want to call this function straight away whenever someone open the MetaMask. So this is how we can call it: window.onload, and we have to give the name of the function. So my function, I want to call it. Work on the copy address. It's fairly simple. We'll use navigator.clipboard, and we have to simply write text, and we have to pass the address. So that's the first, and this is the last function which allow us to change the account. So we'll do one thing. We'll take this variable called data, and it's coming from document.query selector, and we have to select this based on the account value. Then we have to take this address, and this will be the data attribute, and we have to get this particular one. So we'll say data attribute, so it will give us the address. Then we have to get the private key, and we'll say data.get attribute, and this is the attribute we have assigned, data/private key. So we have the private key and the address. Then we have to simply console log out both the thing if you really want to check. That's what we're going to do it. So that's the entire logic. We got the address and the private key. Now we have to simply change that. So what we're going to do, we will take a variable called user wallet, and we have to change our local storage data. So we'll say address is going to be the address, private key is going to be private key, and we'll change this norming to message.call changed, means user have changed their account. Okay, now we can come here. We'll say const JSON object, and we have to simply update our local storage. So we'll pass the data, then we have to call this local storage dot set items, and we'll take this keep, and we'll pass the value. So this will update the local storage, and now we have to reload the window, so it will fetch the information as per the data, the account the user have taken. So that's how a change account function works. So pretty good. We have written so many things. You can see this is the entire one. We have all the documents, all the elements we have targeted, and we have attached all of these functions. That's pretty huge, and this one is the biggest part of this project. Okay, that looks pretty good. All of this state variable, this is the function, check balance, selected network, set network, login user, create user, open create, sign up, login, log out, transfer, go back, open import, go back. So many things we have, activities, all of the things we have here. Okay, my function copy and change account looks pretty good to me. Close this one, and that's the only thing we're going to cover in this video. That's the only thing I want to cover in this video. Hope you guys have got an idea, and whatever logic we have implemented, or whatever function we have built in, you guys have understood that how we have written all the functions. And I hope you guys have got the starter file and you have coded along with me. If you have stuck anywhere, or if you want to take the final code, you can definitely come and take it to compare it. Okay, in the next video we're going to start working on the API, so let's move to that.